Jessica. I have Mary with me today, another interview with everyday people. This one is very special and it's the first of its kind because we are going to talk about doing hCG as a vegetarian. So I actually do get a lot of questions about this, both for vegetarians and vegans. It does present a challenge because the calories are so low and just all the restrictions. It's like, what do I eat then as a vegetarian on hCG? So Mary here is a vegetarian, so we're going to talk with her with the things that she experimented with and what worked out for her. So that just to give you guys some tips and ideas, and I did some additional researching of like just different calories and protein content and just some links and stuff for you guys that you'll have in the show notes for you to find some resources to do it as well as you can. So welcome, Mary. Thanks for being with me today.
Thank you.
Why don't you just give us a little bit of information about yourself as far as your basic stats for, that you did hCG, your weight loss and size change and all that.
So I didn't do a lot of recording of information. I knew that when I went to a doctor to do the weight loss thing to begin with, because I knew I wasn't going to do it on my own. And he was the one that recommended the hCG as well with the low calorie diet, as well as a what do you call it, appetite suppressant on top of it and B12 lipo shots. So of course I had no idea what I was getting into. I had told him that I had a weight loss goal of 20 pounds, but I knew I needed more to lose to hit a target, but I wanted it to be reasonable where I didn't, shoot for the moon. When I went in, I just had that goal. I started the hCG, and actually my doctor didn't give me a lot of information, unfortunately. And your website was awesome, by the way, because I didn't want to read that really dull book that's out there, and I wanted to kind of get started right away. And then I was trying to figure out how to do it as a vegetarian and searching for things online. And then I found your website, which was super, super helpful because he'd given me such a little amount of information. So little, actually, that I didn't even know about the loading days. I just started right into the diet.
I read that in your notes. I was like, oh,
okay. So I was like, oh, wait, I could have loaded. Oh, I missed all that. But it still worked out fine. But I did, what he gave me as a vegetarian was to substitute quinoa as my protein, which is a complete protein. It's just unfortunate that I really don't like quinoa, and I don't like it, especially if there's not stuff making it tasty, something savory. So doing the diet without savory foods is a little bit difficult. So I tried a lot of things with spices or vinegar or different things. And I did tolerate the quinoa for about 2 weeks, and then I just got fed up with it because I just couldn't get it down anymore. I was hardly eating it because it grossed me out so much. Exactly. Some people love it. Actually, they usually just don't eat it plain. So I actually started sprouting it as well because it tastes different when it's sprouted.
Yeah.
And it's actually more nutritious that way anyway. So when I sprouted it, I could put up with it a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I started doing things like combining it with my cucumbers and putting vinegar on it, or trying it curried up or different things like that. And it kind of grossed me out. So then I started reading more online and saw about the substituting of eggs and egg whites, cottage cheese, realized that I also don't really like cottage cheese that much. And I've been a vegetarian for 25 years. So I'm pretty used to a vegetarian diet.
Right.
And I know what's out there, and I know that I can get by without much protein, as many vegetarians and vegans do. So the quinoa was really great, and I would recommend that anybody does it, stick with the quinoa for a couple of weeks, because it's probably the cleanest food besides eating processed foods. Because what I started getting into was eating eggs and processed soy products, which is not for everybody. And also, it took me a while to realize it, and I probably would have survived quinoa longer, but I started making myself soy chili, which I used, instead of tomatoes, I used my tomato sauce. I just used plain jar tomato sauce and the soy cubes, and then I put chili like spices in it, and it was suddenly my life was better because I was eating something savory. So even as a meat eater, you can make yourself like a turkey chili or something like that if you don't want to do the processed foods. But the Boca crumbles were lower in calories, and that's a vegan product, and so vegans can also use that. But I got in about 2 weeks in, I started swapping out my quinoa for eggs. I started it first with the whole 3 egg whites and 1 whole egg thing, and quickly realized that that I was just better off eating two plain old eggs. And I
Yeah.
realized also that you can fry eggs in a nonstick pan without any oil, which I didn't realize that before. You don't need
Cool.
water, you don't need oil, you don't need butter. It'll stick a little bit and fall apart, but it's easy to clean off. So
Cool.
I would just start eating for my proteins in the morning. I would have one, sometimes two eggs, and then I would have my vegetables all day type of thing, and then I would have my veggie chili at night. I occasionally had a veggie burger, not that often, and I also tried cheese. So sorry, I jumped into the to what I was eating a lot more,
No, it's
but I
fine.
don't remember.
That's a good overview, you know? So now you guys know that like she had a process in this. Like you've experimented with quite a few things, and then yeah, when we go more into it, we can talk more in detail about each of those things. Just for just a little background on you, what's your age and height, and what was your starting weight and all that?
So I was 43 at the time, and my starting weight was 149, and I'm
Okay.
only 4'8", so I was definitely well past what I should have been at. I was still fit, like I could run a 5K
Yeah.
type distance, but I definitely my weight was just going up and up and up, and I couldn't get it to stabilize. It wasn't that I was trying to diet, but I couldn't find a way to actually keep my weight from continuing to grow.
To go
So I
up.
realized
Gotcha.
yeah, so I realized I wanted that metabolism reset and I needed some direction on that.
Gotcha.
So my starting weight was 149. I tried pulling up the MyFitnessPal app, which I used, but I couldn't get in today
Yeah.
to try to track what I did in that first month. So I was getting the B12 lipo shots at the same time, which I definitely believe gave me a lot of energy and probably helped to accelerate the process. I want to say that in that month, or it's a little over a month that you're doing the hCG, I want to say that I was at 18 or 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And then after that, my doctor had me on half of my daily calories of what my metabolism would sustain. So he put me on one of those little machines where you like hold the bars and your feet
Yeah.
are on these pads. So my calorie count afterwards was only 800 calories. So no, I'm sorry, it was 600 calories.
For
So I
half to
wasn't
eat
actually
half of
going
it.
to eat half of my calorie count, which was
Wow.
kind of ridiculously low.
Yeah.
So I was almost eating the same thing all the time, but what I started doing was adding popcorn to my diet. I ate
Okay.
a lot of popcorn.
I love
Um,
popcorn.
yeah, I could add those miracle noodles, but I
Okay.
but I sometimes definitely went over 600, but I was starting to run more, so
Okay.
I didn't worry about it too much. But because I wasn't hungry all the time, I was so used to eating less, it wasn't as hard to get by with what I was doing. Oh, I should also add, I did a lot of non-fat Faye yogurt as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So I continued to lose weight after the hCG,
Okay.
and I'm now down. I hover between 115 and 117. So I lost a little over 30 pounds.
Gotcha. So all total.
Phase
So,
one, phase
oh gosh,
two.
you know, Mary, hold on a second. I have to sign for a package. Sorry, guys, I had to take a quick break to sign for a package. So
No
anyway,
problem.
yes. So where were we?
We were talking about so overall, I think I forget where we left it
Right.
off,
So
but overall,
149 was where you started, and then now you're like 115 to 118 ish, right? So you've lost around 30
yeah,
pounds in
mhm,
total, and about 18 to
yeah,
20 of that was with hCG on the protocol, it sounds like.
that's right. Yeah,
Cool. Very cool. And then
yeah.
also,
And I should add, I wasn't using the shots. I was using the tablets,
right, and they
like the
were, I
little.
think, homeopathic pellets then. Is that right? The three times a
Yes.
day? Right,
Yeah.
gotcha. So that's a good clarification too. Cool, very good. And then you didn't load, which is kind of unique too.
Yeah.
So, but then like you said, you had the compensation of initially you had the appetite suppressant that he gave
Yeah.
you and then the B12 and lipo shots. So, and it's cool to hear your feedback on the B12 and the lipo shots too, because I do hear mixed things. It does sound like, especially for a vegetarian, like you had mentioned in your notes, that getting B12 is more of a challenge when you're not a meat eater.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yeah.
So it does seem definitely in that case it could really be a good thing.
Right. And then
Mm.
after I stopped seeing the doctor, and pretty much every day since, I take liquid vitamin D in the vitamin D and vitamin B12 or a mixed vitamin B every morning.
Gotcha. Very cool. Now, so what was your size change in clothing then with that weight loss?
Uh, I was around a 12 depending on what I was wearing, and I it depends, you know how women's clothes are.
Yes.
So I some things I wear a 4 in, most things I'm a 6 in, and one pair of pants I was a 2 in.
You're like, I am saving these forever.
So, but I'm definitely not a 2.
Yeah, so that's great. So a 12 to a 6, that's a huge difference, and you probably just feel a lot more comfortable in your body now.
Yeah, it was good getting rid of some of the fat clothes for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. And tell me, like, how did you become overweight? Because it sounds like before that you sounds like you've been pretty active for much of your life. So what happened? And you said your weight was just kind of continuing to go up. What were the circumstances in your life that was causing that?
So starting about 4 years ago, my father passed, and I also started a new job, and that job was also more set. And I think just all the stress in general. And then I started eating out a lot more at my new job because of just social aspects and a lot of restaurants nearby to go out with people. And so there's that like two slice pizza special, with the
Yeah.
diet soda or something like that. The diet soda is no good for you either.
Right.
So, so it was just easy to just keep eating, and then I just was eating more, and I was eating out a lot more. And then even when I was trying to be more careful, it just seemed like my weight was just still climbing and climbing and climbing, and slowly it's just going to keep going. Something has to happen
Yeah.
for this to stop.
Gotcha. I thought it was interesting how you said that you shifted from having a very active job with a lot of manual labor to a job without activity, and then also a back injury that limited you for a while. Um, because I was thinking, I was thinking, hey, that's because recently I actually hurt my back too a little bit last
Right.
week. It's very recently, but
Six,
um,
yeah, I bet that's possible.
yeah, yeah, and my workouts have been different as a result. I can't do any like weight bearing exercise at the moment. And so I have been aware that like in the
Mhm.
past I wouldn't have known that like I need to alter my food intake while I am burning less calories. You know what I mean? Like you realize it's like, yeah, it's true. When your lifestyle changes, we don't always kind of connect those dots that like, whoa, I was doing a manual labor job and probably burned 1,000 extra calories a day, and now I'm just sitting at a
Yeah.
desk, but you're still eating the same. So I think that
Yeah.
happens
And
to a lot of women.
I had even started running more, so I had been doing running programs, and even with the running, it made no
Didn't help.
difference.
Like, didn't
Yeah.
help. Which also shows how much stress can play a role in hormones and stuff
Mhm.
in your life and your weight and
Yeah,
everything. Even if you're doing everything right, if you have a lot of stress or a lot of changes going on, it can still impact you.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very good. Very good. So yeah, altogether close to 30 pounds, almost 20 with hCG. I thought maybe now we could go ahead and talk about this whole vegetarian aspect of it. So let's start with quinoa. So the
Hmm.
quinoa you said you started with, it's what your doctor recommended. You did a quarter cup uncooked, right,
Yes.
for the protein. And then I looked that up online because I was like, well, I wondered how much that was cooked. Because sometimes if you guys want to like cook in bulk, you might be making a larger batch and then just serving yourself a cooked portion. And that could range anywhere from
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
3/4 of a cup to 1 cup of cooked quinoa. And the reason there's a variation there is because they said that quinoa doesn't always absorb water the same every time you cook it. So somewhere between 3/4 and one
Right.
cup cooked for
Yeah,
you guys.
I would usually just double the amount, and I would make a cup or whatever, double it when I cooked it, and then I just divide that pot in half
Gotcha.
for the day.
Gotcha. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then I looked up the nutrition facts for the quinoa, and so it has in like a 1/4 cup uncooked serving, it has about 200 calories and 7 grams of protein. And I have the link to that for the macro facts, you guys, in the show notes. So just to give you the stats there. Um, and like you had mentioned, it's a complete protein, which is why it's a go-to for vegetarians because it has all 20 of the amino acids. And a lot of you guys probably already know this, but it's like I guess 10 of the amino acids our body needs we can't like synthesize ourselves. So that means we have to take it in food form from somewhere else, and quinoa has all 20 of them. So kind of
Yeah.
interesting. I just wanted to share it for people who are listening in case it's new information or helpful for them. I know you already know all this
Yeah,
stuff.
I think it's probably the most helpful if someone's a vegan
Yeah,
because
oh,
there's
gotcha.
limited options.
Right, that is true. That's true. Yeah, very true. Okay, cool. All right. So, very good. So that's with the quinoa. And then now you mentioned that you didn't really love quinoa too much, and so you tried sprouting it.
Uh-huh.
Um, I was curious when you sprouted it, and you guys, I put a link to a tutorial on how to sprout quinoa for anyone who doesn't know who wants to try it. Um, did you actually cook it after sprouting it, or did you eat it raw sprouted? I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, I would eat it raw sprouted.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, I see. So tell us what you did for recipes with the quinoa then.
So I don't remember very well
Oh, well, I
because
can tell you. It's in your
I think
notes.
I would use just like apple cider vinegar and certain spices that was sometimes type of thing. Just again, I was doing everything I could to cover up the quinoa taste, and
Right.
nothing really worked for me. And then once I figured out the chili thing, I was able to do it with tomato sauce and chili powder spices, and that
Cool.
helped a lot.
That sounds good. Cool. So one option, the apple cider vinegar, salt and pepper, or Bragg's mixed in with cucumbers and half an apple or just apple is what you wrote. And then yeah, and your chili, which the recipe you guys will be in the show notes. So that does sound really, really yummy. Yeah, and then also I was gonna mention too that with the Bragg's or soy sauce, they have gluten-free soy sauce these days, which you mentioned you used. And then there's also
Hmm.
coconut aminos. Those aren't my favorite, but it is another thing,
Yep.
the coconut
Those,
aminos. Yeah, tell us about the cottage cheese. You tried that out. Um,
yeah.
what did you say you didn't care for as much with that for you?
With the Brags or with what?
I'm sorry, the cottage cheese.
Oh, I just don't love the cottage cheese flavor that much. So
Gotcha,
I
gotcha.
I tried it a couple times and then realized I'm not really a fan. I'd rather have something else. I'd rather have yogurt instead, for example.
Gotcha, gotcha, yes. And you know what I was kind of noting was that you mentioned that you felt less full when you had the cottage cheese. And
Yeah.
and I was kind of thinking like I don't know if that's in comparison to the quinoa, but the
It
serving
could be.
size, yeah, because I actually looked up the serving size. So what we typically do on hCG is when we use cottage cheese, we sub 100 grams or 3.5 ounces of cottage cheese. And when I looked that up online for the fat-free, it's actually only 70 calories. Does
Yeah.
have 12 grams of protein, which is great, but like for a quarter cup of the uncooked quinoa, that's 200 calories. So it's actually more than double the calories. So it makes sense that it wasn't as filling because it was just like only 70 calories. So it's possible that if you like
Yeah.
cottage cheese, that if you had a slightly larger serving, it might be more, satisfying and filling. So I thought that was interesting too. But I'm kind of with you on the whole yogurt thing. I would rather have the Greek yogurt than the
Yeah. Oh,
goat's cheese.
absolutely.
So yeah, so with the with the Greek yogurt, then the same thing there. If you do the 100 grams or the 3.5
Mhm.
ounces, that's about 100 calories. But what was really cool is that I looked up like an organic Nancy's brand, it had 19.2 grams of protein.
Yeah. The
And
fat-free Greek yogurt is
yeah,
really high in protein and very filling.
yeah, so that's actually a lot of protein. That's pretty impressive actually. So for a
Yeah.
vegetarian, that's probably actually a good use of calories, you
Right. And
know?
actually, I used it a lot. I had it a lot in the morning, but I also used it like dessert at night. So
Nice.
I split up all my meals throughout the day. Instead of doing two big ones, I did four small ones. So I would
Cool.
have protein and half of my fruit in the morning, and then
Nice.
I would have vegetables throughout the day. So dinner, I would also usually do my vegetable. And then later on, when I was sitting on the couch,
Uh-oh, I lost you again. Let's start from yogurt.
yeah.
So the Greek yogurt, you enjoyed having that, and you said you liked to kind of eat it for like a dessert or something?
Yeah, a lot of times in the evening, I would have my vegetable as my dinner meal. And then when I was sitting on the couch watching TV later, I would chop up my fruit and put it with the yogurt. And then it just felt more like I was having dessert because it was
Nice.
sweet and it was yummy and it was, in the evening. And that probably helped because in the morning, I usually wouldn't eat my breakfast right away. I would oftentimes bring it to work and eat it just a little bit later.
Gotcha.
So maybe it helped that I was having protein at night. just to get through the next morning.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's a good idea. And then I was curious with the, since you talked about splitting your meals up when you were originally having more of the quinoa and you had that 1/4 cup uncooked, did you split that into two meals or did you eat that all at one meal?
I split that into 2 meals as well. Yeah,
Great.
so I always split my fruit and my protein and my vegetables up into 4 meals. And it was that by the end of it, my morning was usually that I had yogurt with half an apple. And then I would have a lunch of all of my vegetables. And then in the evening, I would then have vegetables again. And then or I would have my chili, my soy chili. And then I would have the vegetables with the soy chili. So I didn't need another vegetable with that. And then I would have my apple or strawberries in the evening.
Gotcha. Because I was thinking, I can't be sure about this, but I was thinking it was really wise that you split your meals into four potentially on hCG because, like with the quinoa, I keep going back to the quinoa. The
Yeah.
quinoa, well, just because I'm fascinated by all this, and I don't know a lot about
Yeah.
this, there are 38 grams of carbs and 35 grams of net carbs in that 1/4 cup uncooked serving. So it actually does have a lot of complex carbs in it, but
Hmm.
you were splitting it into two. So it's not
Yes.
like you were getting that hit all at once with like almost 40 grams of carbs. So I think
Right.
actually that may have helped like balance things out. So I think for anyone
Hmm.
else doing that, that might be a good idea to keep in mind because then you're only getting more like 17 net carbs,
Yeah.
and then with your veggies and stuff. I don't know if that makes a difference. I'm just throwing it out there, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. And then later you kind of changed it up anyway. Yeah, so okay, so now with the chili, you talked about finding the Boca soy crumbles
Hmm.
for your chili that you loved. And so you guys, what I've done is I put a link to the ones that she mentioned, and the calories and macros on that, and plus a few other links as well to some other brands for you guys to check out as well. So that's all in the show notes. Um, but the nice thing about these is that they have a fair amount of protein in them, even though, they're a little more processed or whatnot. So, and it sounds like you really enjoyed the taste of them as well.
Right. And I didn't jump right into it. I was worried about stalling. So in the beginning, I tried, I would still do quinoa once a day, and then I would do something else the other part of the day. And when it turned out I wasn't stalling trying anything else, then I thought, well, woohoo, now I can have eggs, or I can have yogurt, or I can have the soy crumbles, and it won't make a difference.
Gotcha. Okay, great. That's good to hear. It sounds like your weight loss was fairly consistent then throughout year
Okay.
round.
It was consistent every week. I was going down the same amount of weight generally every week, which again, I can't remember exactly what it was,
Sure.
but pretty much every time I weighed in on a weekly basis, I weighed myself every day, obviously, but when I went to the doctors on a weekly basis, I was always losing the same amount per week.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Cool. And then I want to mention for you guys also the Boca soy crumbles. Obviously, they have soy protein in them. And then they also do contain a small amount of gluten, I think, because of the malt extract. So I did find another one that was gluten free and soy free. And the main ingredient is pea protein isolate. And I put the link to that. It's called Beyond Meat Beefy Crumble. And it also had low carbs and higher protein. And then I found another meat replacement on Amazon. It was more like a powder that you probably make yourself, but that had some good reviews as well. So you can check that out too. So how about eggs? So you mentioned that instead of doing
Yeah.
the whole egg plus 3 egg whites, you liked to just do 2 eggs, right?
I usually just did 2 eggs, partly because the one egg with 3 egg whites was actually too much for me. I couldn't actually finish eating it all,
Oh,
which was a nice thing that I wasn't
yeah,
that hungry. But I don't like egg whites as much as I like a whole egg,
yeah,
and I also don't like wasting eggs. So as a
sure.
vegetarian, I'm also already feeling guilty about eating eggs. So I usually just had 2 whole eggs and called it a day.
Gotcha.
Or sometimes it was just 1 egg. If that's all I was in the mood for, I just had 1 egg and had more vegetables.
Gotcha. That's good. And that was okay for your appetite, it sounds like. So that's
Yes.
cool. Yeah, and then again, just for you guys for comparison, the nutrition's fairly similar actually between 2 whole eggs versus the 1 whole egg plus 3 egg whites. For 2 whole eggs, it's 138 calories, and the hCG thing, whole egg, 3 egg whites, is 121 calories, and then it's 13 grams of protein versus 17. So it's actually pretty similar. It's not really that different. So that
Right.
seems like that was a cool substitution. And then now you said you tried a veggie burger. Do you want to talk about that?
So I just the same thing. I always ate veggie burgers before. So when I first tried doing a fake meat on the diet, I just tried with a veggie burger to see if I would stall the next day, and I didn't. And the veggie burger was good, obviously, but I found that making the chili was more savory, and what I was really missing on the diet was having savory foods.
Gotcha. Give me those savory things.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well what I did was you guys I found a blog post actually of some people that took like 7 or 8 different brands of veggie burgers and like did a taste test and then gave their verdict, and then some they were like, this is disgusting. It tastes like a sock, and then it was like,
Yeah.
and then there was one that was like, this tastes just like my mom's homemade beef burgers. So so I put a link to one in particular that had a really good taste test approval. It was called Gardein Beef Burger, Gardein, if you're listening or watching and just want to Google it. But that one actually seemed like a suitable choice for hCG because it had 140 calories for one patty. It had 15 grams of protein and 5 grams of fat, just a little bit more, but not too bad. Some of the meats on hCG would have about 5 grams of fat. So that seemed workable, and they said it was tasty. It did have soy and gluten in it, just FYI, but it had a good taste test approval. So anyway, you mentioned having lettuce and tomatoes drenched with something as a snack too. What was that?
Well, so when I would have my vegetables, instead of just having them plain, I usually would try to make it salad-like. And so I would cut up my tomatoes and I would just drench them in balsamic vinegar and have it like that. Or I would have my lettuce drenched in balsamic vinegar or apple cider vinegar, which is actually really good weight loss vinegar anyway, and it helps balance your pH. I should mention I also used a lot of stevia, so I would have tea with stevia. And so I think having the pH balance made a big difference both between the vinegars and the stevia.
Yeah, that's true. And I wanted to mention about the balsamic vinegar because I love balsamic vinegar too. And the ones that there's a difference between balsamics, like the really liquidy, really vinegary ones. Those are typically fine on hCG, but then they have like more syrupy ones, like in
Yeah,
restaurants and stuff. Yeah, and those actually have a lot of sugar in them. I mean, they're really good, but that's why they taste really sweet. But you probably don't want
yeah,
to do that on hCG because they actually have quite a bit of added sugar. So P4 though.
yeah.
Very cool. And then you mentioned if you were super hungry that you had a small bowl of like broth with, do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yes, if I felt really hungry, which wasn't that common, but sometimes it happened, I would just make broth with those miracle noodles. So I didn't have that in it, but they're out there. And then I would make that and throw a little bit of the miracle noodles in, and I was totally fine.
Nice. Yeah, and you mentioned like miso broth, which is really yummy. I love miso broth actually. Um, that's very cool. Very good. And then we've got your recipe here for the chili, so we'll share that with all of you guys. So we'll do that. And then, you also mentioned too, it sounds like you were pretty strict with not mixing your vegetables on P2. Is that right from your notes?
Yeah, I was very strict. I usually just had one vegetable at a time. It was either cucumbers or tomatoes or lettuce.
Yeah.
It was pretty straightforward with that.
Good. Yeah. And I want to just mention for you guys, I do have a blog post about that topic. It's on mixing vegetables, and I'll link to it in the show notes. Um, but I did want to bring out that it's probably smart that you did that because the one thing I mentioned in the blog post is that you can mix vegetables, but that you have to be more aware because once you do, the amount of calories you consume and the carb count can go up really easily without you realizing it. And
Hmm.
so I was thinking that being vegetarian and then having your protein sources already having more carbs in some cases than the meat for a meat eater, that could just be a little more difficult. So it probably was a nice just kind of automatic safety guard by just
Yeah.
sticking to the one vegetable. So in that case, it might be best to stick with that, you know?
Hmm.
So very good. And then Mary listed for you guys, she kind of already talked about it, but she wrote down in her notes, which will be in the show notes, just an example of kind of when she ate and what she ate in a typical day on P2. So yeah, thank you for all those tips today, Mary.
Yeah, sure. I
Yeah.
hope it's helpful. I hope you're able to edit
Yeah,
it.
no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And then I forgot forgot to ask you earlier, but so how long have you been kind of maintaining now?
So I started, unfortunately, I was kind of dumb and I started 5 days before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And so my initial month of hCG went into late December, and then I continued to eat much lower calorie probably through March. And now I eat a somewhat normal diet. I am running more than I used to, so I do get a little more exercise in. But I guess I'm lucky. I don't want to compare myself to other people. I'm lucky in that I can occasionally have something that's not good for me and
Yeah.
not completely bounce back, which is good. And part of that is I think just keeping my metabolism up. So I did
Yeah.
do it. I did try a second round of it for a shorter period of time, but it wasn't the same. I didn't have enough to lose at that point, so
Yeah.
it just doesn't work when you don't have enough to lose.
Yeah, I know, and if your heart's not in it too, it's just like you're not really
Yeah.
miserable and
So I'd say I've been maintaining since about April, and so maybe 4 or 5 months.
great. No, that's fantastic. So it kind of shows that that's worked for you. Those things that
Yep.
you did, vegetarian and HCG, and then you've been maintaining 4 to 5 months. Can you just speak briefly about the role that you feel exercise has played in maintaining? You said you feel that it's helped your metabolism. How much exercise do you do a week, would you say?
So when I was on the hCG, I definitely tried to exercise at least twice a week, maybe about 30 minutes at a time. I would just get on the elliptical and do the elliptical. And then I was able to build that up to a little bit longer time or a little more intensity once I got more energy. And that's where I think the B12 shots really made a big difference
Gotcha.
in me maintaining my energy. And so I was able to start running more. And so most of my exercise right now is just running. And I run about 8 to 12 miles a week, depending on the week. And
Gotcha.
then otherwise, I'm not really cross training that much. But I think I know I need to because my stomach was flatter when I was using the hCG. So even though my weight has maintained, it's kind of shifted where it is based on not doing things like the elliptical or some
Yeah.
cross training.
Gotcha. So with the 8 to 12 miles, like how many days a week is that spread out?
It's
Or
usually three,
gotcha. So about three
usually
days
three
a
days
week.
a week. Mm-hmm.
Which that's encouraging because it's like thinking to yourself that like, hey, I need to exercise to maintain, but 3 days a week, that seems doable, don't you think, for people?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the
Oh,
same for
definitely
me,
doable.
you guys. Even though I don't run, I do the CrossFit, but I only do 3 days a week. So, but it does seem to make a difference. Just like you, I can eat. I don't eat sugar really, but I can eat. I mean, I eat corn tortillas, I eat chips, I eat French fries. Like I do eat that stuff, and I do maintain. So, I do think that the exercise component, and it doesn't have to be. Oh, I lost your face. It doesn't have to be like a 2 hour thing every day. So.
Right. I think even on the hCG, some people are stressed because you don't have as much energy, and you might be starting at a target weight where it's hard to exercise in general.
Yes.
But I think even just doing 5 or 10 minutes where you can get your heart rate up makes a big difference.
Yes.
Even if walking gets your heart rate up, I think that makes a big difference because
Right.
not everyone's going to be an exerciser for life.
Right.
So, but you have to do something.
Right. Yeah, some type of movement. And there's dance classes even. Like if you need something more creative, like there's a lot of dance classes now. There's all kinds of cool stuff like that are fun, like that you actually do because you enjoy it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
well, great. Thank you for all of those tips, Mary. And you look great, and congratulations on maintaining for months.
Thank you.
That's
Well,
fantastic.
thank you for your website. Your information on your website was super helpful. I can't even tell you how great that was to find your website.
Good, thank you. And hopefully it'll be even better now for vegetarians because they'll have some tips and some things to know that they could eat that has worked for somebody. So that's awesome. Well, thank
All right.
you.
Thanks, Rizal.